you're talking about personal rivalries and you're thinking about the NBA, how about these two names? Wilt Chamberlain and Bill Russell.
100 points for Wilt Chamberlain.
Chamberlain had all the personal records, but Bill Russell had all the rings. You talk about personal rivalries, it was one of the best.
Let me teach you who the Big Dipper is. Oh, let me teach you who Wilt the Stilt is.
I'm all ears.
Who's a terrific athlete beyond playing basketball, was a 7-footer who literally should have his own record book.
You know, you could ask former players who were the greatest player in the history of the game. And in my personal opinion, it's Bill Russell. I think he's the greatest. Even today, you look at all the wonderful players that are there. If I started my team today with guys in their prime, I'd still start with Bill Russell.
Back in the 60s, if you went to a barbershop or any place where fans gathered, they always debated one question. Who was better, Bill Russell or Wilt Chamberlain? Now, as a fan, I've been contemplating that argument my entire life. There's no way to decide because they were both such great players, and we're honored to have them with us today, Bill Russell and Wilt Chamberlain.
You didn't say that. You distinctly said that you thought that I had the edge.
Well, we got to talk about this. You made a statement, and this statement's going to follow you around for a while, that you slept with 20,000 women. You made that statement. Now,
I left the hotel and I went to a restaurant down the street. The proprietor asked me what I wanted. I said, "This is a restaurant, isn't it? I'd like to get something to eat." He told me no, so I walked out.
7 to 146. Now let's see if they found somebody quick. Rogers throws long to Chamberlain. He's got it. He's trying to get up. He shoots. No good. The rebound, Luckenbill. Back to Chamberlain. He shoots up. No good. In and out. The rebound, Luckenbill. Back to Ruckwick. Into Chamberlain. He made it. He made it. A dipper dunk. He made it. The fans are all over the floor. They stopped the game. People are running out on the court. 100 points for Wilt Chamberlain.
Chris, I'm here with Bill Russell. Bill, this must have been a great win for you.
Jack.
I know it's hard to say what's in your mind right now, Bill, and it must have been a great win.
Well, this is such a great bunch of guys, you know, and it's just been so fabulous the way they played for me, and it sounds all corny, you know, start talking like that, but I told these guys before the game, I don't care what happens, I wouldn't trade you guys for any guys in the world.
That was fairly obvious, but the leadership has to come from you, Bill, and to bring a team from 4th place during the regular season to the world title, the 11th title in 13 years, you've got the respect of everybody in the country.
Well, Jack, it's my guys. It's just my guys. These guys play ball for me, and they're such a great bunch of guys. I just can't say enough about the guys.
Bill Russell versus Wilt Chamberlain. It's a tale nearly as old as the NBA itself. The scales always balancing evenly. For every yin, there was a yang. Every basketball fan has seen the picture of Wilt smiling, holding that infamous paper with 100 on it. In contrast, Russell's images proudly display his 11 championship rings. Wilt Chamberlain was renowned for his incredible athleticism and natural talent, effortlessly dominating the court. In contrast, Bill Russell's success stemmed from his relentless training and tireless work ethic. Wilt was an offensive powerhouse, iconically averaging over 50 points in a season. On the other hand, Bill Russell was the ultimate defensive stopper, laying the foundations of defensive play by averaging 30 rebounds a season and tallying blocks before they were even officially recorded. Russell's loyalty to the Celtics, both as a player and coach, stood in stark contrast to Wilt's frequent team changes. Off the court, Wilt enjoyed the nightlife and the fame that came with his victories. Meanwhile, Bill Russell remained humble, using his platform to champion civil rights. A rivalry so even, yet so seemingly one-sided. Despite the constant comparisons, Bill Russell always came out on top when the two met on the court. Let's dive further and discuss how a simple change in mindset and mentality led to the most rings in NBA history. From the beginning, the paths of Wilt Chamberlain and Bill Russell diverged, setting the stage for their contrasting careers. In high school and college, Wilt Chamberlain was already a dominant force, breaking records and establishing himself as a supreme athlete. His natural talent and physical gifts were undeniable, and he was determined to leverage these to become the best of the best. Wilt was laser focused on his training, not to just excel, but to ensure his place in history and earn the recognition he craved. In contrast, Bill Russell's journey to basketball greatness began in an unexpected place. Initially, Russell had no intention of pursuing basketball. He was a track and field star, excelling particularly in the long jump. Unlike Chamberlain, whose athletic pursuits were varied, including a notable time in volleyball due to his, again, natural abilities in both vertical and height, Russell's sporting focus was singular until the suggestion of basketball was given to him. Upon his coach's suggestion, recognizing his potential from his track performance and, of course, again his height as well, Russell considered basketball. For the longer fans of the channel who know I enjoy Naruto, think of Wilt as Sasuke Uchiha, naturally gifted and drawn to power, while Bill Russell was more like Naruto or Rock Lee, the underdog who rises through hard work and not listening to critics. Chamberlain's path was clear from the outset. He knew his abilities set him apart and sought out ways to profit from them. After just 2 years in college, Wilt Chamberlain signed a lucrative deal for the Harlem Globetrotters, equivalent to about $700,000 today, emphasizing his immediate grasp for fame and fortune. His decision to join the Harlem Globetrotters after just 2 years in college was a clear indication of his desire to monetize his talent and enjoy the fruits of his labor as much as he could and as fast as he could. Russell, on the other hand, played 3 years of college basketball, driven not by the allure of money or personal glory, but by a deep-seated desire to win and to uplift his team. His success on the court was simply a means to an end, a platform from which he could champion racial justice and equality. The fame and the financial rewards were simply secondary and side effects, byproducts of his primary mission to create a lasting social impact. Before they even set foot in the NBA, the differences in their motivations were evident. Chamberlain's journey was marked by a pursuit of personal excellence and recognition, a desire to cement his status as a basketball legend, or at least an elite athlete. Wilt built off his existing abilities, constantly honing his physical skills to stay ahead of the competition. He was a natural scorer and athlete, focusing on perfecting what he was already good at. His training was aimed at maintaining his edge, ensuring he could dominate any opponent with his talents. Russell, however, was a fundamentalist, focusing on mastering the basics and building a strong foundation, a similar philosophy that would later earn Tim Duncan the nickname the Big Fundamental. Russell's work ethic was born out of necessity. He wasn't immediately the best player on the court when he started. If you remember, he only started playing after his coach's suggestion, but he made himself indispensable through relentless practice and a deep understanding of the game's intricacies. His training emphasized defense, teamwork, and the mental aspects of basketball, such as positioning on the court and anticipation, which allowed him to excel against more physically gifted opponents, just like Wilt. Their reasons for playing basketball were also deeply contrasting. Growing up in an era of racial segregation, Russell experienced firsthand the injustices of society. His basketball success again provided him with a voice for his civil rights. For Russell, the game was not just about winning on the court, but making a difference out of it. As they transitioned into their NBA careers, these foundational differences in their motivations and work ethics would only become more pronounced. Chamberlain continued to chase individual accolades and records, while Russell remained humble and persistent in the pursuit of team success and societal impact. Their legacies, while intertwined, would be defined by these core differences, setting the stage for one of the greatest rivalries in sports history. The world of sports isn't just about physical prowess. It's also a mental game. An athlete's mindset can make all the difference. That's why teams spend so much interviewing players, not just to assess their physical skills, but to understand their mental toughness and heart. Think about it. Movies like Remember the Titans are so endearing and insightful because they show how a unified mentality can overcome challenges and lead to success. It's not just about who's the strongest or the fastest, but who has the right determination, the right focus, and the right ability to aspire their team. Off-court activities can have a huge impact on performance. Positive behaviors like maintaining a healthy lifestyle and building strong relationships often lead to a better performance. On the flip side, distractions like excessive partying or negative influence can derail an athlete's career. That is why what happens off-court matters just as much as what happens on it. Heart and mindset are everything in sports. A player with a strong heart that gives their all, pushing through adversity and lifting their teammates. A positive mindset keeps them focused and confident, even in those high-pressure moments. This is why coaches emphasize these traits so much during training and recruitment. Again, movies like Coach Carter highlight this. Coach Carter's emphasis on discipline, academics, and respect show how mental and emotional strength can turn a team around. Movies even such as Rocky show his relentless determination and belief in himself against the odds, and is a classic example of how heart and mindset can lead to greatness. These aren't just movies, they're lessons for life. Psychological power has just as much importance as physical, raw strength. In the end, the right mentality can transform a player and a team. It's not just about their physical skills, but the drive, resilience, and the unity that wins championships. In the same way that Wilt signed with the Globetrotters, Wilt signed one of the biggest rookie deals in the NBA by signing with the Philadelphia Warriors by a territorial pick, meaning that Philly got dibs on him simply because he lived there. Again, this was influenced largely due in part to the fame and success that Wilt had already made a name for himself with. Meanwhile, Bill Russell was traded on draft night due to Red Auerbach simply taking a chance from recommendations of others without even seeing him play a game yet. Wilt was a huge part of the NBA's marketing, which only furthered Wilt's own marketing as well, adding more to Wilt's financial goals of basketball and solidifying his status as a household name. In just the first few years of his career, he was on the Ed Sullivan Show on March 24, 1957, as a part of the college basketball All-Americans. He was in a Volkswagen commercial to display his height compared to the car, and he was even in an underwear advertisement. Wilt was so connected to the fame that he was even trying to break out into music with his record That's Easy to Say / By the River in 1960, like a Ghost of Christmas Past version of Damian Lillard or DJ Diesel. Advertisers and brands were quick to recognize his appeal, seeing him as the perfect spokesperson to attract fans and sell products like a predecessor to MJ, and his name became synonymous with athletic excellence. In contrast, despite his contributions on the court, Russell often faced hostility from the local community and even from the fans. While he was competing for the Celtics, his home was vandalized and he had to endure racial slurs and exclusion. He, like many other people of color at the time, was often refused service during away games, and Bill Russell earned his name by pushing back against such attacks, refusing to play when such actions took place. If he could not be treated like a player, he wouldn't participate as one either. While Wilt was slowly being brought up on a pedestal, Bill Russell was breaking down walls and using the bricks to build his own stairs to success. In the first years of their NBA careers, again, the yin and yang presents itself. Wilt Chamberlain averaged an astonishing 37 points per game and 27 rebounds, taking home both the MVP and Rookie of the Year awards. Wilt's entrance into the league was highly anticipated with his previously mentioned extraordinary success in high school and college, that many speculated that Bill Russell's monopoly on championships would simply end as soon as Wilt joined the NBA. Bill Russell, on the other hand, averaged 19 points and 23 rebounds per game, seemingly far less superior numbers. But these stats don't account for his defensive capabilities that don't even show up in the box score, including blocks, which weren't recorded as a stat until 1973. Even without it being in the box score, it's estimated that Russell was averaging 9 blocks a game, with performances hitting 50, 20, 25, and even 30 blocks in a single game. The prediction that Wilt would put an end to Bill was quickly put to rest. Despite Wilt winning these rookie accolades, in the same year he would lose to Bill Russell, who would lead the Celtics to their 4th consecutive finals appearance. A common argument for this is that Russell had a better team, but that's not entirely the case. It wasn't just the players that made the team, but how they were utilized and worked together. Wilt Chamberlain had 8 All-NBA teammates throughout his career, while Russell had only 5. Yet Russell was able to integrate his teammates like puzzle pieces, forming a cohesive unit, while Wilt often focused on his scoring abilities alone. While Wilt Chamberlain could dominate the scoreboard, his overwhelming presence was both a blessing and a curse for the Philadelphia Warriors. In the 1960 season, Wilt averaged an incredible 37.6 per game. Apart from Paul Arizin, who averaged 22.9 points per game, no other player on the team scored more than 13. Despite Wilt's eye-popping numbers, the Warriors ranked only 6th in team offense out of the 8 teams in the league at this time, placing them in the bottom 25% of teams, highlighting the significant imbalance in their overall performance. Wilt's fame and scoring ability was working against him. His records, scoring feats, and high-profile endorsements effectively painted a target on his back. Opposing teams knew that stopping Wilt was crucial to defeating the Warriors as a whole, which led to constant double and even triple teams against him, similar to the approach taken against prime Steph Curry. Wilt found himself regularly surrounded by multiple defenders. When faced with these defenses, Wilt's approach was typically to simply plow through or go over the defense using his superior athleticism and height he was famous for. This actually almost worked. While this strategy often succeeded, as evidenced by his 40-point average, it wasn't always the most effective method for team success. Wilt's tendency to take the defense on alone rather than passing to open teammates frequently resulted in missed opportunities for open baskets. For instance, despite Wilt's prolific scoring, the Warriors' overall defensive efficiency was hindered. The team heavily relied on Chamberlain's individual brilliance, which made their offense predictable and easy to defend. This predictability allowed opponents to devise game plans specifically to neutralize Wilt, forcing him into difficult shots and reducing the Warriors' overall offensive effectiveness. Wilt was choosing to make the game a 1v5 and not allow other teammates with better shots to contribute. The lack of offensive diversity ultimately limited the team's success. Despite Wilt's individual achievements, by not utilizing his teammates more efficiently, Wilt was inadvertently constraining the Warriors' overall offensive potential, making it far easier for opposing defenses to target and neutralize him. In comparison, where the Celtics truly shined was in their balanced scoring and team dynamics. In the same 1960 season, 6 Celtics players averaged double-digit points, compared to only 4 players on Wilt's Warriors. This balance made the Celtics' offense less predictable and harder to defend. It wasn't just about one superstar, it was about a cohesive unit working together. This distributed scoring meant that opposing teams couldn't just focus on shutting down one player such as Wilt. Instead, they had to contend with multiple offensive threats, all facilitated by Russell's playmaking abilities, which again led to the narrative that Russell had a better team and better teammates. But he made it this way. Russell himself averaged 3.4 assists per game, but more importantly, he was the anchor of their offense, initiating plays and making crucial passes. The Celtics' offensive strategy was built on ball movement and teamwork, assuring that everyone was involved. While certain stats weren't recorded at the time, meaning we do have to take some estimates with a grain of salt, there are sources that calculate Bill Russell's and Wilt Chamberlain's usage ratings. In the 1959 to 1960 season, Bill Russell's usage rate was 15.9, whereas Wilt's was nearly double at 30.1. In the same season, using Basketball Reference, Wilt had 13.8 win shares, while Wilt had 17, and yet the Celtics won 10 more games. The Celtics balanced scoring distribution and made it difficult for opponents to devise defensive strategies, as they couldn't just focus on shutting down one player. Instead, they had to account for multiple offensive threats. Players like Tom, Bill Sharman, Bob Cousy, Frank Ramsey, and Sam Jones all contributed significantly, making the Celtics a well-rounded and formidable team. Russell's role extended beyond just his defensive prowess. His ability to draw defenders and find open teammates was crucial. His basketball IQ and unselfish play helped create scoring opportunities for others, embodying the essence of a true team player. While Wilt's Warriors relied heavily on his scoring ability, making their offense more predictable, the Celtics thrived on their versatility and collective effort from all players. The team-oriented approach not only led to more wins, but also established the Celtics as the dominant force in the league. To put it simply, Bill Russell was asking the question, how can I be better for my team? Wilt was asking, why is my team failing me? Wait a second. That sounds kind of familiar. What year was the Wilt rivalry at its peak? 1961 to 1962, you say?
And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country.
I know JFK's talking about the United States here, but maybe Wilt could have taken some of that advice and applied it to his basketball play. As their careers progressed, the differences between Wilt Chamberlain and Bill Russell only became more pronounced. The gap in win shares and usage rates continued to widen, with Russell's win shares at 12.6 compared to Wilt's 16. Russell's usage rate was 16.1, whereas Wilt's soared to 33.9, again reflecting the heavy involvement in the offense. The Warriors began to relocate to San Francisco, where they now reside today. While Wilt moved with the team, many of his teammates chose to retire or request trades. Several factors contributed to this exodus of players, such as players' ages or personal commitments like wanting to stay close to family. However, one can speculate that if Wilt had fostered stronger connections with his teammates, maybe they might have been more inclined to make the move with him. Instead, the team dispersed to different corners of the country. Wilt had a historic 44 points per game, but the Warriors were still only 5th in defense, even worse than before with Wilt's legendary numbers. Wilt's offense wasn't even pushing the pace either. The Warriors were in the bottom 3 teams in the league with a 38 win percentage, while Bill Russell and the Celtics had the most wins in the league with 72.5. Going into the following season, people often point to 1962 to 1963 as a reason that the NBA and others have always favored Bill Russell over Wilt, and saying that there was a bias there. Seeing as how Bill Russell won the MVP with drastically lower numbers. Well, long before social media and other forms of popularity contest seemed to determine the award, the MVP truly meant most valuable player. There were no Warriors without Wilt. As we have discussed, he was the team. So surely that meant that he was the most valuable, right? However, with the same balance of scales displayed the whole video, there was also no Celtics without Russell either. The key difference is what was explained in the last 5 minutes or so of this video. If Wilt were to leave the Warriors or take a less high usage rating, teammate stats would improve. While if Bill Russell left the Celtics, they'd be left directionless. No moral compass or leader to guide them, and they would surely all take a dip. Even if both had all-star teammates, many allude to the fact that some Warriors wouldn't be all-stars without Wilt's presence. Wilt increased the popularity of the team. Wilt made some players all-stars by getting his teammates' name out and getting them in the door, while Bill Russell made his teammates all-stars by letting their stats speak for themselves. This is further evidenced when looking at the fact that once Wilt left the Warriors, despite the Warriors falling in rankings, yes, every single player's individual stats improved, including Guy Rodgers going from 7 assists to 10.7 assists a game, aka meaning more possessions with Guy Rodgers having the ball and more opportunities of teammates making shots. Red Holzman even commented on this, saying, "1-on-1, Wilt would have murdered Russell and everyone, but playing 5-on-5, Wilt had consigned to a specific role because of his ability to score so easily, whereas the Celtics fit Russell into their team concept better." In 1965 to 1966, Wilt decided he wanted to move back home with many of his past teammates and moved back to Philadelphia for the newly established 76ers, taking place of the previous franchise. However, Wilt's ego was in full force again as he often butted heads with Dolph Schayes as coach, coming off of a previous rivalry when Schayes was a player. But we'll touch on that more later. A year later in 1966 to 1967, things actually began to change. A new head coach for the 76ers came in and was ready to put players in their place. Alex Hannum came in and immediately addressed all problems, all with Wilt at the center, practically laying out all the issues stated before in this video. The offense was stagnant, the offense was inconsistent, there wasn't enough ball movement, and they were relying too much on one player. Obviously, when presented with these ideas that Wilt was the problem, and having all fingers pointed at him despite leading the team in points, Wilt did not take it easily, which led to many more disagreements. But again, we'll touch on that later, just like Shay's. But Hannum wasn't going to back down any more than Wilt was, and kept encouraging Wilt to adapt to the team. Hannum stated, "I realized how completely inadequate the team had become. They had learned to depend on Wilt so completely that they were incapable of beating a squad of rookies. I had to convince them that they too had responsibilities." Others, however, commented that Wilt's ways would never change. Quote, "Chamberlain," said one Eastern sports writer, "is a loser. Has been all his life. Neither his college nor his pro team has ever won a title because he won't take coaching. All he wants to do is score points." Alex Hannum, however, insists he had no trouble at all getting Chamberlain to play it his way. Even with the initial resistance, Wilt changed his play style. For the first time, Wilt was passing first. His field goal attempts nearly halved from 25.2 to 14.2. And the same happened with his usage rating, going from 36.1 in 1961 to 1962 to 18.5. For the first time in his career, he was scoring under 30 points a game. And with only 24 points per game, for the first time in his career as well, he lost the scoring leader position to Rick Barry. But on the positive sides of first of his career, for the first time, his team was number 1 in offensive rating. And for the first time, he got to put a championship ring on his finger. Of course, compared to Bill Russell's, nearly 2 full hands by this point. Wilt's new play style was so shocking that it led to Ed McCauley to give a quote that rivals Ron Artest, "Kobe passed me the ball."
And he made us feel so good. And he passed me the ball. He never passed me the ball. And he passed me the ball. Kobe passed me the ball. And I shot a 3.
From that point on, Will continued to play as a teammate, leading to another championship later down the line. However, problems were still evident in the realm outside of stats. Wilt Chamberlain was all about putting on a show. Even as a kid, he was performing at an elite level to grab attention. Joining the Harlem Globetrotters, a team known for its entertaining spectacle, only amplified that side of him. And he carried that flair right onto the NBA court, as we just wrapped up discussing. But Wilt didn't just love to be the entertainment, he loved to be entertained too. Off the court, Wilt dove into the vibrant nightlife, becoming a regular at nightclubs and mingling with celebrities. His charm and fame drew women, and he famously embraced a lifestyle filled with romance and adventure. Wilt was also a familiar face in advertisements, as we discussed, adding to his larger-than-life persona. Whether he was dazzling on the basketball court or living it up in the city, Wilt knew how to make an impact everywhere he went. Even just in college, he was featured in popular magazines of the time, including Life magazine, Time magazine, Look, and Newsweek. Wilt's fame was so large, it didn't simply stop at magazines all the way back in the 60s. In 1984, he was even in a Hollywood movie, and a big one at that. In the 1984 film Conan the Destroyer, he stepped into the role of Bobata, the nemesis of Arnold Schwarzenegger's iconic character. Wilt was so big on his pursuit of entertainment that he would rather live in New York for life in the Big Apple and commute the 2 hours than live in Philly, where he played. While basketball was his claim to fame, Wilt had a flair for the entertainment and a love for the big city life. Even when he played for the Philadelphia Warriors in the early 60s, he lived in Manhattan and communicated 2 hours to games in Philly. Newsweek described his fascination with the big city to the north, and it almost cost him his most iconic moment. The morning of his historic 100-point game, Wilt nearly missed the 8 a.m. train to Hershey after partying so hard the night before. Wilt was hungover and tired and nearly missed the train, barely making it. Making this 100-point photo that was discussed at the very beginning almost never even happening. His athletic confidence didn't just stop at basketball either. He truly believed that he was the best athlete in the world, at any sport, from his physique and his gifted talents. Don't believe me? He challenged Muhammad Ali, yes, that Muhammad Ali, to a boxing match, hindering on the fact that Wilt had added height and wingspan, thinking it would give him the advantage over the veteran, well-trained boxer. Chamberlain was also the first player to earn at least $100K a year, and during his Laker years, he racked in an unprecedented $1.5 million. That kind of cash let him keep his Manhattan lifestyle while playing in Philly, where he'd famously sleep until noon after nights out. According to his own lawyer, Seymour Goldberg, some people collect stamps, while Wilt collected women. Swedish Olympic high jumper Annette Tenader, who met him when he was 40 and she was 19, not gonna comment on that, described him as a charming pickup artist, but was always confident, however, never disrespectful. She said, quote, "Wilt hit on everything that moved, but he was never bad about it or rude." Still, not everyone shared this rosy view that he was not bad or rude. David Shaw from the LA Times called Wilt rude and sexist during a dinner, noting how Wilt abandoned his date mid-meal to get another woman's phone number. And then, of course, I'm sure you all have heard the 20,000 women story. He didn't shy away from it either. Wilt famously said that sex was as great a part of his life as basketball was, and that's why he was single. Wilt's unapologetic embrace of this lifestyle extended to his home, where he had a room specifically designed for this exploits. It wasn't just any room, it was a waterbed paradise, surrounded by mirrors with a plaque outside that read, "The Do It Room." Whenever he stated that sex was as big a part of his life as basketball was, as far as legacy goes, he had a point. He was nearly just as well known for the 20K woman story and other adult adventures as he was for his 100 points or basketball. His disco uniform, in fact, is up for auction currently, starting at $20,000. 20,000. Well, that's a convenient number, again popping up. $1 for every woman he claimed to sleep with. Wilt was so ingrained in this nightlife that he decided to make his mark permanent, buying a Harlem nightclub called Small's Paradise, a spot where he once played during his college days near Harlem. Owning a piece of the scene wasn't just about its business and making money, it was Wilt's way of solidifying his place in the world of the late night glamour. He wasn't just a guest now, he was the host. He was the life of the party, and he was the guy so-called popping bottles with models. If you remember a few years ago, the media went crazy and had a frenzy over James Harden hitting the clubs. Now think of all those viral photos. Multiply that by 10 and swap in Wilt's face, and you'll start to get an idea. Harden had social media and cameras everywhere, documenting his every move, while Wilt was in an era where you could party until dawn without having to deal with TMZ. But if social media had existed in his day, Wilt's feed would have been legendary, filled with VIP sections, champagne, and a guest list that would look like the All-Star game. Again, owning Small's Paradise was more than just owning the business. It was an extension of his lifestyle. Whether on the court or under the disco, he knew how to dominate the spotlight. Meanwhile, where was Bill Russell in all of this? On the darker side and more profound side of history, Russell was breaking down barriers and making history in his own way. While Wilt was basking in fame and glory, Russell was holding desegregated basketball camps as a powerful message against racism, a stand that unsurprisingly brought him death threats. It was quite the contrast. While Wilt was dominating the headlines, Russell was also dominating headlines, but not for his fame, but for risking his safety. Russell often expressed his deep respect for Jackie Robinson, recognizing the courage it takes for Robinson to break barriers as the first black athlete in Major League Baseball. And Russell saw his own activism as a part of the same legacy. As Jay Storr notes, in the early 1960s, Russell participated in numerous grassroots actions, including leading a march from Roxbury to Boston Common, conducting basketball clinics in Mississippi for black and white children during Freedom Summer, and joining the historic 1963 March on Washington. He continued his activism into 1967, where he stood along other prominent black athletes at the famous Cleveland Summit to support Muhammad Ali's refusal to be drafted into the Vietnam War. But Russell didn't just stop there. Decades later, in his lifelong dedication to civil rights, he earned the Presidential Medal of Freedom from Barack Obama in 2011. And even in the 2020 NBA season, Russell's legacy resonated as he vocally supported the Leafs' decision to take bold statements on racial injustice and use their platform for change, just as he did. Even after retirement, you can start to see their differences. While Wilt strutted through life with a chain and goatee, trying to cling on to his cool factor as long as he could, Russell aged gracefully into a wise elder statesman with a cane. Where Wilt's legacy is a mix of basketball dominance and scandalous stories, Russell's is one of courage, adversity, and social change. Both men left their marks, but their paths and what they stood for will forever stand as stark opposites. As explained earlier, Wilt Chamberlain's career was marked not only by his dominance on the court, but also by complicated relationships with teammates, coaches, and the media. While his skill set and physical gifts were undeniable, his approach to team dynamics and authority often created friction that overshadowed his achievements. When Dolph Schayes became the coach of the Philadelphia 76ers, the friction was immediate and palpable. Schayes was a Hall of Fame player in his own right, but struggled to command Wilt's respect. Chamberlain had faced Schayes on the court during his playing days and viewed him as an inferior rival. To Wilt, the idea of taking orders from somebody he believed that he dominated on the court was simply laughable. Their working relationship devolved, with a huge power struggle punctuated by constant outbursts and heated confrontations. On multiple occasions, Wilt publicly dismissed Schayes' authority and undermined his leadership in front of the team. Their volatile relationship ultimately reached a tipping point where Chamberlain essentially forced the organization to remove Shays as head coach after simply 2 seasons. It became a clear example of how Wilt's unwillingness to subordinate himself to authority could derail even the most promising coaching arrangements. Wilt had a knack for doing things his own way. His teammates weren't fans of this unconventional approach, and they didn't hesitate to voice this approval when during the 1966 Eastern Division Finals against the Boston Celtics, Wilt decided to skip practice at a time when the 76ers absolutely needed to practice. In Game 4 of the series, Wilt's lack of preparation started to show, and he scored only 15 points, a steep drop from his 26.3 points average across the first 3 games. Despite the 76ers being in a critical spot, he did not show up for practice, a decision that frustrated several teammates. According to Robert Cherry's biography, Wilt Larger Than Life, one unnamed teammate expressed how Wilt's absence was a recurring issue that disrupted the team's rhythm, saying, quote, "Sure, he should have been there. Isn't Wilt just like you and me? Today was the same as it's been all year long. Wilt misses a practice, and it aggravates the guys." Wilt's performance in Game 5, when he dropped 46 points and 34 rebounds, was impressive, but his glaring weakness from the free throw line, converting only 8 of 24 attempts, contributed to a Celtics victory of only 8 points, where those free throws really mattered. When asked by journalist Joe McGinnis if his missed practice had affected his free throw shooting, Wilt lashed out. And his response was blunt and unapologetic, saying, "All the fucking practice in the world ain't gonna help me at the free throw line." The issues with Shays only continued again as Hannum came in. We already discussed Hannum's impact on Wilt's career, but I mentioned that it was rocky and we would touch on it later. Where Shays asked for Wilt's respect and subordination, Hannum instead demanded it, sometimes even by force. In one infamous incident, the two came to blows during a heated locker room argument. Hannum, unwilling to back down from his star player, reportedly swung at Wilt, who retaliated. The fight was a microcosm of their relationship, fiery, intense, and always on the verge of explosion. An archive of an article written around the time states, "Finally, as the season's opening game approached, Hannum and Chamberlain fell into deep, violent argument. Hotly intent, they rent at each other for real. Other players rushed forward in time to prevent blows, but Hannum still glared at Wilt. 'All right, we'll go outside and settle it,' Alex said. But the players wouldn't allow that. In their minds, the matter was settled. Hannum's ideas had won. They were right. Wilt led the Warriors to a championship of the West that year. It was a team with grave weaknesses, however, and when they were exposed the following year, chaos ensued. Wilt was traded in mid-season to Philadelphia, Hannum was later fired, and they wandered through months of despair and coincidence until they ended up on the same team again last fall, this time in Philadelphia. There was no rancor or distrust. They knew they needed each other. Hannum needed to outcoach Bill Russell, and Chamberlain needed to outplay him. The ego got so bad that rather than staying with his team like Bill Russell and the Celtics, he requested a trade. Among many other reasons was his problems with Hannum, as well as feeling he was too good for the team at this point, and either wanted even more elite pay that he was already getting, or to become a star somewhere else. And what better place to become a star than Los Angeles, the biggest market practically every year of the NBA, or sports in general. Not to mention Hollywood and other resources to turn the dial to 11 for popularity, more than Wilt already had. But as they say, it's not all glitz and glamour, as being in LA only caused further problems. The 76ers were willing to get rid of him, and in fact, the Lakers actually had an opportunity to get Wilt earlier, but the executives vetoed it because they knew that he would throw off their chemistry. Bleacher Report writes, despite Wilt's impressive talents, the man is a pain to work with. This explains why his former team like the Warriors and 76ers were willing to trade him for lesser talents just to get rid of him. Russ has a much better attitude, and despite of his aloof manner in public and private life, he exudes a sense of camaraderie whenever he steps into the court or inside the locker room. Some of Wilt's negative attributes, which could be traced to his prima donna personality, includes disrespecting and criticizing his coaches publicly, demanding a higher salary, complains like a baby to the media, and rarely practices and travels with his teammates. If I was a coach in real life, I would dread the idea of bringing Wilt Chamberlain on my team. Alex Hannum had to challenge Wilt in a fight just to get his respect. Ask yourself what kind of basketball player would push his coach to such lengths just to earn the player's respect. It's not worth it having him on the team unless his talents are programmed in an android devoid of his personality. When on the Lakers, he was surrounded by elite talent. While that's meant more help and hopefully a winning team, and also more camera time around other popular faces, it also meant that Wilt wasn't necessarily in his own echelon anymore. Wilt was fighting more with the Lakers, especially coach Van Brenda Kolff. Tom Hawkins, another Laker, stated he couldn't even recall a Game 7 of the finals because there was more action going on the bench between Chamberlain and VBK than there was on the floor. Imagine that. Game 7 of the finals, the most important game of a season, with extremely high stakes, and you can't remember it at all due to a fight on the bench between your own coach. The Los Angeles Times reports the Butch-Wilt feud polarized not only the team, but the town of LA. Chamberlain used to rip VBK in the Herald Examiner, which became known as Wilt paper. VBK used to rip Wilt in the Times, which became known as Butch's paper. Heaven knows what might have been possible if they'd had minicams in those days. We were said to be the greatest assembly of superstars ever. We were never a team. Wilt and Elgin never blended in their styles of play. Hawkins continued, stating, Wilt was probably the most individualistic person and athlete I've ever known. He prided himself on that individuality. The Lakers were real close-knit people on and off the court. We had no experience with that type of personality, and that posed some problems. The Los Angeles Times continues, painting a beautiful picture of the argument, where VBK essentially claimed that Wilt was a quitter, writing, with 5 minutes and 19 to go, and the Celtics lead down to 103-96, Chamberlain left with a sore right knee. Although Russell would later accuse him of having copped out, none of the Lakers Wilt was such on tenuous terms with ever did. The same knee he complained about gave way just next season, Hawkins said. Wilt was not one to shirk away from the challenge. I was sitting there. Wilt put some ice on it. VBK was out of his mind. He felt short of death. Nobody should have come out of that game. Then, when Wilt was asked to come back, Bill said, "Forget it. We don't need you." They were talking to each other, sure. VBK was furious. He was absolutely livid. But he was livid most of the time. Wilt was angry because of VBK. In making that decision, labeled what Wilt had done. Wilt didn't understand how Bill thought he could come out of the game like that for the hell of it. The Lakers got within a 103-102 and had several shots to go ahead. West and Erickson missed, but didn't. With 1:17 left, Nelson hit the famous 15-footer. It hit the back of the rim, bounced high into the air, and came down in the basket. The Lakers lost. I tore part of my patella tendon, so it wasn't some little pull, Chamberlain says. I played with injuries and pain all my life. I came out to get some ice and go back in the game, and I found out he wasn't going to let me go back in the game. I asked him 2 or 3 times. He said, "No, you sit down and shut up." Those were his words to me. What I've always felt sorry about, my teammates knew I was the best center in the game, but no, they didn't come to my defense. They didn't come over and say, "Wilt, can you play?" No, they were willing to accept mil counts. I think one of the reasons was they harbored a little bit of desire to win without Wilt. Later, VBK quit to leave Wilt behind, and previously mentioned Hawkins left and retired as well, stating, to him, this game was just the last act in the circus. Another article delves deeper, but I'll summarize it in one statement that they wrote, saying, it's in its transparency that VBK's statement points up the Lakers' dilemma, Chamberlain or VBK. Invariably, one or the other is blamed for everything. There is some justice in this, since it is in their continued inability to compromise that is at the base of the team's problems, and there is some injustice. The way they bitch about Wilt, says one Laker, it would never occur to you that anyone else on the team ever even misses a foul shot. Wilt later transitioned into coaching with the San Diego Conquistadors of the ABA. His lack of engagement and focus reached new heights. By this point, Wilt's disinterest in authority extended even to his own role as a coach. He rarely attended practices and spent more time promoting his book than strategizing for games. His players, frustrated by his absentee leadership, saw him as more concerned with his personal brand than the team's success. Wilt's brief stint as a coach reinforced the perception that he wasn't willing, or maybe not able, to commit to a role that didn't revolve around his stardom. His assistant coach, Stan Albrecht, said, he has a great feel for pro basketball, but the day-to-day things that are an important part of basketball just bore him, and he did not have the patience. Reportedly, he once skipped a game to sign autographs for his book. This resulted in Wilt finishing his only coaching season at 37-47. However, he had to get, of course, the last word in. Keeping his ego, he commented on the fact that he was displeased by the meager attendance as crowds averaged 1,843, occupying just barely over half of the team's 3,200-seat arena. On top of all that, he wasn't even meant to be coaching in the first place. He was still on contract for the Lakers, but thought that he could still earn some more money and recognition by coaching. This led to a lawsuit that he needed to obviously finish his contract to play with the Lakers. Imagine that. A player in a court battle to play games in their contract. Imagine in the years that Ben Simmons was on the bench, he decided in the meantime he could go and coach the Brooklyn's G League team, the Long Island Nets, and then sued them over it. Simply insanity. Sportscasting writes, the Lakers hit us with a lawsuit, and it became a political thing, Bloom said, per Terry Pluto's book, Loose Balls. LA said they had an option clause in the contract, so if he was going to play with anyone, it had to be them. The NBA and the Lakers put a lot of pressure on the courts, and the courts bought their argument, but the option clause didn't cover coaching, and so he could coach. The article continues on with the point previously made about his commitment to coaching in the first place, stating, let's just say it seemed like Stan Albrecht had a lot of input, an awful lot, said Van Vance, former announcer of the Kentucky Colonels, saying, people around the league said it was really Stan's team. And how could it not be? There were games where Chamberlain wouldn't even show up or would pop in around halftime. Wilt did show up occasionally and pretended to be coach, but it was really Stan's team, said Alex Hannum, former ABA Coach of the Year with ABA's Oakland Oaks. It wasn't that Wilt couldn't do it or that he wasn't smart enough, just the opposite. I've coached Wilt, and I can tell you that he has a great feel for the game. He understands pro basketball, But the day-to-day things that are an important part of coaching just bored him, and he didn't have the patience or the desire to coach. Even as a coach, Wilt was a draw, said former ABA player Gene Littles. When San Diego came into Greensboro to play the Cougars, we sold out. People just wanted to see the guy. But Wilt didn't show up for some reason. Stan Albeck coached the team, and a lot of players were really upset because there was no Wilt. Wilt just wasn't very reliable, said Carl Scheer, former ABA GM. He showed up at halftime during a game to Charlotte. He tried to capitalize on his name, but Wilt didn't help because he didn't like to make appearances dealing with the media. Wilt Chamberlain's career was defined by his relentless pursuit of fame, but this quest for stardom often came at the expense of relationships and his reputation as a teammate. While his on-court brilliance was undeniable, his legacy had become just as much about his conflicts, ego, and reputation for stat padding as it is about his basketball achievements. Clutch Points even ranked Wilt as the 9th most selfish player in NBA history, even over 60 years removed from his first year playing. The irony in Wilt's story is hard to ignore. He spent his career striving to be the best. Yet today, he is more often compared to Bill Russell, who embodied selflessness and a commitment to a team's success. Wilt's desire to become the greatest individual player clashed with the team-first mentality that Russell had campaigned. The media, though, didn't miss the irony. In one particular memorable game, the Lakers won despite Wilt finishing with just 18 rebounds, 9 assists, but 1 singular point. Critics hammered him for not scoring more, even while winning, and Wilt obviously lashed out, pointing out the double standard. When he was known for his high-scoring performances, he was labeled as selfish. But now, when he helped his team win by focusing on other aspects of the game, he was criticized for not scoring enough. The truth was that this was exactly what Wilt had wanted, to be known for his individual achievements. But in the end, it worked against him. His fame as an offensive powerhouse overshadowed any acknowledgement of his shift towards valuing team play. By that point, it was a too little, too late in order to change the narrative. Perhaps the greatest irony of it all is that despite Wilt's unmatched individual success, he is frequently compared unfavorably to Bill Russell, whose career was defined by selfless approach to winning. While Wilt sought to be remembered as the best individual player, Russell focused on making his team the best, and ultimately, it's that mentality that wins championships. Wilt's legacy, marked by brilliance and controversy, remains entangled in comparisons and overshadowed by his own desires for fame, whereas Russell's legacy was defined by his dedication to the collective success of his team. That's all I got for this video, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you enjoyed, please drop a like. Please drop a comment, as it really does help the algorithm. Subscribe if you're new to the channel, all that good stuff. I like making these longer and more in-depth videos, and you guys seem to like it. That's why my uploads are more spaced out, so I can be more in detailed and give some more documentary style videos like this. So again, I hope you all enjoyed. Thank you so much for the recent support on the channel, as I recently hit over 10K subs. And again, I will hopefully see you all in the next one. Peace out. Before the video ends, guys, I did also want to include that for my Best of 2024 video, I am doing an award show for all of my videos where the nominations and submissions were given by you guys, the viewers. And I put all of those into a poll over on my community tab where all of you can go and vote for what you think is the best video for each category. And then those will be compiled up and we'll have an award show for what video deserves each award. So that's my way of giving back to you guys and showing that y'all are really supporting me and letting your voice be heard on what video you think is the best. With all that being said, I'll see y'all later.
This is not okay. This needs to stop now.